Are we live? I have it up on my computer right now to make sure that like everything's working properly.
So it says it's live on mine.
Really? Oh, here it goes. There we go. Oh fuck. All right, yeah, we got it. There's a little bit of a delay, so I'm always like, oh god.
Okay.
We have 8 people watching. Hello, everybody. Pay attention to me. Oh, nice. If I made time to one of these, thank God. How dare you not come in? Oh, anyways, people, I should probably introduce you, right? This is a expert in pathological narcissism, particularly in treating it. I want to point out that he mainly is talking to his clinical experiences along with some other research he did. So if you need a reference on some of this, don't just go with that. But yeah, he runs a channel, Heal HPD. HPD, Jesus Christ, I am on something today. Heal NPD, great stuff if you want to learn from the like psychology standpoint. Also, yeah. Morris here. Welcome.
So I'll just kind of dovetail on that. Yeah, my name is Dr. Mark Eatonson. We've collaborated a little bit in the past. I do have my own YouTube channel called Heal NPD, also a podcast, and I'm a licensed psychologist with a specialty in treating and writing about and researching pathological narcissism and NPD, and also author of the book Unmasking Narcissism, a guide to understanding the narcissist in your life, which explores the psychology of NPD from a compassionate perspective.
I want to point out, by the way, I still need to read your book. No. I haven't read it yet. I'm broke right now. I haven't bought very much.
You know what? Send me your address. I'll send you a free copy.
Oh, really? Oh, hell yeah.
I am right here. Which there? Yeah. I've got a bunch of copies right there.
Right there on my oh, that's hilarious. I am very excited. Okay, I will. Also, somebody complimented my haircut. I have to acknowledge that because that's awesome. I do. Thank you. My haircut is great. Dr. Ruth is saying hi to you, by the way. Want to say something back?
Oh, hi, Dr. Ruth. Yes, and we were just talking about you just before we went live, and that I've been meaning to reach out to you, and apologize for the delay, but I've been sick, not COVID, thankfully, just your average run-of-the-mill flu or cold, but it's had me down for the count for the last week, and now I'm on cough drops as a result. So, but I'm looking forward to collaborating.
I am looking forward to watching that, honestly. That will be real. Given that you guys both talk about narcissism, but from different schools of thought of psychology, I think would be really cool. Also, I need to say hi to Karen. Hi, Karen. How's it going? And also, Mara said hi to you.
So is there a way that I can also see comments, or is that...
Can you not see
there it is. Nope, I got it. I figured it out already. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, good. I didn't want to have to tell you every comment that went through.
I know, right?
Oh my God. Mar said boss fight. Yeah, can you guys get into a debate about which school of psychology is the best?
That would be fun.
That would be awesome.
We might just agree though, you know? Yeah. And then it would just be like turn into like a circle jerk about, you know, which how awesome that particular school is.
That's so funny. You guys were like, oh wait, we can combine these schools now, make a whole new one. My because I don't know if you saw me. Did you see me and Ruth's interview?
Yeah, I have not watched the whole thing, but I did check out like parts of it.
It's like 2 fucking hours. So
it's a long interview, but it looked like it looked like a great collaboration.
It was great. I brought it up because like I use do you know Plato's Cave, the allegory?
Yeah.
I describe psychology basically using that metaphor being like, you can't go outside this cave. You know what I mean? And so all the schools of psychology are kind of dealing with the same things in their own ways that I think are all kind of valid in certain regards.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's part of what's interesting and difficult about psychology, and why, in my mind, it will never be a proper science.
Yes.
There will always be an element of art in it, you know, And it's simply because there's a point at which it's pure conjecture, right?
Oh yeah, you can never
I mean,
enter the internal experience of somebody completely.
Nor can I think outside of my the sort of bounds of my own psychology. I literally cannot think outside of my own psychology. Right.
No, literally. Yeah. Like you have a lens that is based on your personal experience and everything.
Yeah.
And you can try to step out that to the best of your ability, you know, with empathy and stuff.
Why are the scare quotes around empathy? My goodness. This is its own conversation.
We can get to that for sure.
Okay.
Oh fuck, I had something really important to say, but I completely forget what it was. I hate my life. That's awesome. ADHD is great. So we got a question here. Do you think it's possible to be in a non-detrimental relationship with a vulnerable narcissist? I had BPD. My first thing to say is that do you mean vulnerable presenting? You know what I mean? Like, yes, there can be people who are more primarily vulnerable and stuff like that, but you also keep in mind if they're only showing vulnerable traits, there's high correlation between BPD and vulnerable narcissism. And I feel like if they're a vulnerable narcissist presenting, you can actually relate to them on a lot of facets.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Somebody is saying covert. That they clarified that they mean covert. I don't know that actually clarifies it, or that actually muddies the water a little bit. By what is meant by covert.
Yes.
Right. A lot of times, and I don't know if this is true for Angel like 101, but a lot of times people use the word covert synonymously with vulnerable, and they're not the same. All NPD presentations, all pathological narcissism presentations contain elements of both vulnerability and grandiosity. And typically, when the vulnerable symptoms are more present, the grandiose symptoms are covert. They're implicit. They're hidden. They're under the surface, driving the vulnerable symptomatology. Yeah. And vice versa. When the grandiose symptoms are present, it's to compensate for covert vulnerability.
It's funny, actually, because I was telling Tess earlier, Spirit Narc, I was basically telling her, like, hey, because we were talking about how to accept our feelings of worthlessness and our grandiosity. And I feel like whenever I'm in a grandiose state, there's that underlying, it sounds so weird. But when I'm in a grandiose state, it feels like the vulnerable aspects are more real. And when I'm in a vulnerable state, it feels like the grandiose aspects are more real.
What do you mean by more real, though, when you say that?
Like, it's actually part of me. Like, that's actually part of my identity and who I am.
Can you say a little more about that? I'm intrigued, but I'm trying to understand what you mean by more real or more part of your identity.
Oh, fuck. I haven't thought about this too much, in fairness, so I might half-ass my answer. But it's like, I feel fake all the time, right? Okay. Whenever I am, like, even when if I'm expressing, like, very deep-seated emotions, like, in a vulnerable state, like, once I was crying to my girlfriend about how I'm a terrible person and how I'm so sorry about coming into her life. And that felt fake. It felt like I was doing it for attention. But at the same time, my grandiosity, like that I was better than people, felt a lot more like who I was, even though I wasn't feeling it at the time. I knew it was there, but it was like, how do I put it? I felt like the emotional versus rational brain. My rational brain was telling me, yes, I'm grandiose and better than everybody, but I felt worthless.
I see. I think I'm starting to get what you're saying. And I think part of that has to do with, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, part of that has to do with the ways in which the grandiose, sort of compensatory, grandiose, false self experience will often feel like the more real self, like the true. So this is my true self, right? And even in a vulnerable state where there's kind of a breakdown of that feeling, I think there can be less practice, for lack of a better word, less sort of resonant, mirroring kinds of experiences in that vulnerable state where you're broken down and you're expressing, you know, self-doubt, self-loathing, dependency, longings, right?
Yeah.
Where you're actually sort of expressing something raw like that. A part of what sort of makes something feel like it's ours and it's true to our experience is having, on repeated occasions, expressed something to somebody and have them sort of have it resonate with them, and they sort of mirror it back to us, and it becomes ours in that process.
Yeah.
But a person who was raised in an environment that sort of creates narcissistic pathology didn't get that emotionally resonant experience enough. And so then it makes sense if you're a grown-up and you're experiencing that vulnerability, and it somehow feels fake.
Yeah.
Whereas the kind of grandiose side of the equation somehow feels more real. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, I got you.
I'm thinking about it.
Well, because it's funny because I was literally just because Cluster B Milkshake, or Sarah, she made a video very recently about how she felt like she felt like a doll to her mother. And it's funny because the only time that I ever felt loved by my parents, well, maybe not loved, but appreciated, was when they were bragging about my intelligence and stuff like that. And it makes sense how, like, those superficial qualities that they don't, I'm conflating those with love. Mm-hmm. And so when that happens, it's like, oh, well, that almost feels real, more or less.
Well, we're all kind of looking for how we belong, right? You know, mm-hmm. Like, who am I in this group of people into which I've been born? You know, in which I find myself as a young child, right?
Yeah.
Who am I? What is my value, right? And ideally, we get the message that our value is simply to be there.
Yeah.
Right. That it brings joy and meaning to our parents just because we exist. We're intrinsically valuable. But I think what can happen instead is that there's this message that's given that's like, you're valuable because you can do this trick, you know?
Like, I made a TikTok about this, and maybe a video, I don't remember. But like, somebody once asked me, what if somebody thinks that you're worthless, but they still love you? And my brain fucking short circuited. Like, the idea that your worth isn't tied to your to how lovable you are was so foreign.
Yeah,
that was insane to me.
Yeah. Like, your job is to be narcissistically or otherwise gratifying to your caregiver, right? That's your job. And if you're not doing your job, then what value do you have? And that's, I think, really how the false self comes into being.
Oh yeah. And it, like, I'm not sure if this is a normal experience of it, but like, there's a certain degree that I am, well, especially nowadays, but even like back whenever, where the false self was kind of a conscious experience of me. Like, I knew I was like putting up a performance and stuff like that. Yeah. It was a lot less clear cut back then, I would say. But I was maybe it wasn't, it felt like me, but I knew that I was acting in a calculated way. I knew that I was trying to present myself better. Does that make sense?
Well, this is I think the division, the internal kind of dichotomy in identity that you see on LinkedIn every day. I don't know if you go on LinkedIn, if you're like,
not often.
Okay, well, so at some point you'll reach a point in your life where, like, you have to go on LinkedIn, like, for various reasons, right? And I tell you, LinkedIn is just, I look at these people and I'm like, this is so fake. This is so phony. And you know what I mean?
No, I feel like that about every social media.
Oh, well, I mean, that's true to an extent too. Facebook is that way too. But LinkedIn is just this particular distillation of, like, you know, presenting my, like, best professional self, right? And there's a disingenuous quality to it, right? Yes. But there's also a quality to it that's completely authentic, and it's the yearning to sort of be seen and approved of in a certain way, right?
They're using narcissistic defenses in that way.
That's exactly what's happening. but it's one thing to do it as an adult, hopefully with maybe a more integrated underlying identity, and just to realize you have to play this game in the professional
And in one
world.
instance.
That's right. So another thing, if that's sort of the basic approach to life, the basic stance to life is, I must put this face forward in order to be, you know, approved of, loved, valued.
I think that's a big difference, is that they're doing that because they're using a narcissistic defense to advance their academic career.
Yeah.
For me, it's I'm using that to be loved. And I think that's kind of the key difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I always say narcissism, and I think you say the same thing, actually, in the videos of yours that I've seen. You say, excuse me, still getting over this cough. It's not COVID, everybody. Just putting it out there. It's not COVID, thank goodness. But it is. I do have a cough.
Well, we're doing this virtually, so it's fine.
That's right. Yeah. There's a crowd of people over here you can't see. No, I'm just kidding. They're all masked though.
Yeah.
No, it's a spectrum, right? It's a continuum. Everybody has narcissistic strivings.
Yeah.
Everybody has a kind of false self sort of defense that they can utilize. You need to lie sometimes. You know, somebody asks you, you know, how their sweater looks or whatever. You're not going to be like, it's fucking terrible, it's the worst thing I've ever seen. No, you're going to be like, you know, you're gonna kind of massage that response, right? Mm-hmm. And so you don't hurt people's feelings too. Yep. There's a kindness that comes from being able to lie at certain times, and so
that's interesting.
Teaching that is an essential skill, and I feel like the same thing is true in some ways for narcissistic defenses. You know, we all need these abilities in order to manage and maintain and protect our self-esteem. But at the same time, when that becomes so dominant that it's disruptive to a person's life and relationships, that's where you have a disorder. Right?
It's really interesting. There's two things I thought was really interesting. One, that you mentioned kindness being a motivating factor in telling somebody their sweater didn't suck, right?
Yeah.
Kindness has never, I can't say never, but that's black and white thinking probably, but it's usually just for approval. It's like, this person might hate me because I'm telling them that their sweater sucks. You know what I mean? And it's a very interesting distinction there. But at the same, also, I want to bring up the, God, we should probably actually, we didn't even answer this fucking question we brought up, but I'm going to say something really briefly of how you mentioned the spectrum of narcissism, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it's very interesting because I viewed it a little bit more categorically, if I'm being honest. And I know that's becoming a very unpopular view as we go on, but I feel like the threshold between pathological narcissism is, well, one, not a extreme expression of narcissism in general, because I feel like narcissism in general is a genuine self-confidence.
Yeah.
It's genuine, like, liking yourself. I kind of view it as narcissism, low self-esteem, then like a self-confident person, then arrogance, more or less.
This was a video you did recently.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
I
remember these distinctions you were talking about.
Because it's like, how can I go from arrogant person who genuinely believes in their superiority or just their abilities and stuff like that, to pathological narcissism where it's self-hate, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think there does. It's interesting. You know, the difference between white and black is a continuum, but at some point it's categorical, right?
Yes.
At some point something's white or it's black, you know, as it is with any color, right? Good. As it is with anything for that matter. I mean, the difference, you know, between like my hand and the desk is a continuum, but it's also categorical, right? I mean,
yeah.
You know, it's infinitely divisible.
Yeah.
But at some point you're like, no, that's your hand. No, that's the desk. It's a difference in kind, not simply degree, right? And so I think that's probably true for narcissism as well.
That's a fucking, okay. I'm literally about to write that down because I guess this is because of my black and white thinking. I always viewed it as like either you're thinking in black and white or you're thinking on a spectrum of gray. And the way that you explained that, like, gave me a lot to think about, actually. That being said, let's answer this question. Do you think it's possible for a non-detrimental relationship with a vulnerable narcissist with somebody with NPD? And let's assume vulnerable presenting.
Yeah, well, I think every relationship is its own entity, you know?
We shouldn't view it through the context of a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, and I also think this thing that we're saying about continuums versus categories is true for relationships as well, right? I mean, at some point in a relationship, a kind of critical mass is reached, and it's subjective. It's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. But at some point, this critical mass is reached where it's like, oh, this is not healthy for me, or that I'm not happy here, or I don't love this person anymore. Mm. And who's to say what factors go into that realization, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's totally possible to have somebody's complimenting your eyes. I see.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, Betty Davis eyes.
Wait, I'm not sure if it's a compliment. I prefer him without the glasses, too. You can see the pain.
And it brings me joy.
Isabel, are you okay? God damn.
Don't make me laugh.
Got a little bit of sadism there. It's fun. Also, I think Mara brought up a good question. Is this that the relationship between the therapist and the client is more important than the specific type of therapy?
Okay, sorry, I got to get my bearings here. I was in like a weird little reverie after coughing. Do you agree with the statement that the relationship between the therapist and the client is more important? Yes, I do. Absolutely, 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
And the research backs that up as well.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. Honestly, well, yeah. I didn't look. See, that's the issue with me is I don't look into the treatment models of narcissism. Yeah. I'm more about, what are these people experiencing and stuff like that. But
100%, it's any bona fide therapy is gonna be effective for most presenting issues, and really the thing that makes a big difference is the quality of the therapeutic alliance, which I think is just so important, right? Because what that says to me is that what underscores for me that fundamentally human psychology is relational.
Yes.
We construct our identity relationally, in relationship with other people, right? Our psychology is very much consisting of parts of people and relationships that we've experienced over the course of our lives. And there was a really simplified breakdown of human psychology I read in one paper once, and they said basically human psychology is like you do one of or a combination of three things. You treat yourself the way that you were treated, you treat other people the way that you were treated, or you find somebody who will treat you the way that you were treated. And that's it. That's how you decode human relationships,
Because to me, it feels like in therapy, the main goal is to basically emulate a healthy relationship.
Well, I would just tweak that a little bit and say that it's to emulate a healthy parenting relationship.
Yeah. I didn't want to go that far, but yes, I do agree, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. I think this is a question that for me is pretty straightforward. Yes, it is healthy. You can have a healthy relationship, that is. I feel like and it depends on your boundaries, right? What you're willing to put up with. I can be intense in my relationships because I'm very emotional. I don't feel like the pathology is defining that relationship, I guess.
Again, it's different for everybody, right? I mean, it's one thing to have try to have a healthy relationship with, somebody who's so pathologically narcissistic that they're essentially psychotic.
Yeah.
And just can't cope with the reality that they're a human being with imperfections and that other people are human beings with imperfections.
Yes.
Right. Versus, trying to have a relationship with somebody who has some vulnerable self-esteem issues and they're trying to compensate for that in ways that maybe are somewhat maladaptive, but also, well, I guess what I'm trying to say
Not
is
super damaging to others.
yeah. Or maybe they're just damaging to themselves and in very kind of specific ways, I feel like this is part of the issue with so there's a way of talking about narcissism online that I see it mostly online. And it's a form of, and I'm not going to pronounce this word correctly because I've never heard it. I've only ever read it. Okay. But the word is synecdoche, I think. It's a turn of phrase that sort of combines a bunch of different people under one heading, right? So the most famous example, how could we put it? So when people say the narcissist, right?
Yes.
The narcissist. Is it possible to have a healthy? And I know this isn't the comment, but I'm just riffing on this.
Yeah.
Is it possible to have a healthy relationship with the narcissist, right? Who's the fucking narcissist? Who are you talking about, right?
I want to point out, by the way, I use that in my the titles of my videos for clickbait. I don't actually think there's a narcissist.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you use it because it gets views, right? I mean, it's there's a way that's it taps into something that I think is more primitive in us, where it's in groups and out groups, right?
Yes.
The
yes.
boogeyman.
To view the out group as a cohesive and homogenous group.
Yeah. So somebody's letting me know how to pronounce synecdoche. Okay.
Synecdoche. Okay.
Well, thank you for that, Dog Training Mexico. I really appreciate it. Yeah. So but that is what I think that is. It's a way of stripping a group of people of their individual identity, putting them under a single broad stereotyped heading. It's a way of dehumanizing people, right? The Nazis used this approach, and I'm not comparing people who defame narcissists online.
Wait, what are you saying about me?
But when they would talk about the Jew, right? And there's a way linguistically that this has been used over and over again throughout time to strip people of their humanity. And I see it used online all the time when people talk about the narcissist, right? You're not talking about a human being now. You're talking about a construct.
Yes. It's a very interesting thing because it forms a sense of identity for the people who feel victimized by people with narcissistic personality disorder or people they assume have narcissistic personality disorder. And I get that, right? Especially when you're hurt. But it's a black and white thinking effectively, right?
Yeah. Well, what is black and white thinking except for, in analytic circles, you would call this a primitive defense.
Yes. I've read that before, yeah.
Yeah. So in grouping, out grouping, black and white, this or that, all or nothing, right? A hallmark of more mature thinking and relating is that you can relate in degrees of complexity and nuance. You can see the gray areas, right? Nothing is either or, really,
Well, okay.
Except for the same thing I just said.
Okay, funny story, actually, though. When I was younger, I constructed an entire philosophy that, reflecting on it, is black and white thinking. Because I was like, if you go to the extremes of everything, it's ones and zeros, black and white. Because when you break it down, everything is just molecules interacting with each other, and you can predict that perfectly, and there's better results based on that. And the results that are prioritized, and I guess it ties into hierarchical thinking, can be better or worse, that depending on what standards you find. And those standards have also hierarchical nature of which one is the best standard to do things by. And it's very interesting how I basically rationalized black and white thinking when I was that young.
We come up with some crazy philosophies, I think, in adolescence. I came up with all kinds of, I remember having like these grandiose sort of conversations with my best friend at the time. We were just like congratulating each other on like knowing everything, essentially. We were just like, there's nothing left to learn, He would know everything.
You're my best friend right now, basically.
and we 100% believed it too. You know, a couple of 17-year-old just shitheads who just no idea about the world or anything else, just completely 100% convinced that we knew literally everything. And the things that we didn't know, by the way, they weren't worth knowing. You know.
Oh my God!
It wasn't worth knowing.
Jesus Christ. Well, not recently, but like when I was younger, especially. It's really interesting. My best friend's actually, I would say, on the schizoid spectrum, is what because we have this kind of thing where it's like, okay, you can have a schizoid like tendency and way of thinking, but when it gets pathological is when it's kind of impeding your life, which I think is pretty commonly accepted kind of thing. Yeah. But it's interesting because I don't know if you ever treated a schizoid, but they do have an innate grandiosity underneath their facade of stoicism.
I find schizoid psychology fascinating, and the author that I often quote when I talk about how narcissists are used children.
Yes,
he calls the schizoid psychology the hated child.
That's okay. That tracks with my friend's experience and very interesting.
Yeah, the hated child. Who then kind of goes into themselves to retreat from the just ubiquitous kind of rejection in their care environment.
Two things really interesting about my schizoid friend is that he always described his room as his safe space.
Mm-hmm.
He'd usually be fine in there. Well, the analogy I made is like there's a difference between being stuck in your room, so to speak, and that's your safe space. I use a dog analogy, I think. A dog that's beaten until it's in its cage, and then it's fine, to a dog that even in its cage is going to be beaten. And I feel like that goes more into cluster B pathology, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. That's an interesting analogy. Yeah, I think Paul Simon, wrote a song about the schizoid experience, right? And
okay.
I'm a rock, I mean, that's essentially what that is. It was singing about, it's going to go into himself. He's just going to not relate anymore because it's too painful.
Yeah. That's so interesting. The distinction in empathy and stuff like that in schizoids. My buddy, and it's funny, my buddy describes masking in a way. He's like, when I go to work, it's like, I'm putting on clothes. I'm putting on clothes to like go to work and present myself to people, which feels to me very narcissistic in a way. But for him, it's far more. It's not. He doesn't care about what people think of him, and that's fucking buck wild to me. He describes how he doesn't want people to know him, to know who he is, not because he's afraid of shame and being lesser than, but it's this just innate sense that he doesn't want people to know who he is. And I saw a similar thing with my schizophrenic ex. We're trying to work things out now, but they think that I don't even know how to explain it because it's so foreign to me. Are you familiar with that concept of not wanting to be known without it being tied to shame?
Yeah, I think not wanting to be known because you're hiding for your own safety.
Okay.
Which is, I mean, so hiding the self in narcissism is about not wanting to be exposed, right? And so there is a way that you're hiding for safety, but I think it's a different kind of safety if you're not wanting to be known because you're afraid you're going to be devoured or something, I see all these questions happening, and it's making me anxious.
Some of them. Well, first I want to say hi, KFK. What's going on? She is in my Discord. I would consider her a friend to a certain extent, but very long time viewer. Let's see. Okay, from narcissist to my daughter and stepson, I get constant passive-aggressive attacks. Any thoughts on how to best handle that, other than going no contact? I'm going to give my perspective first. Passive-aggressive attacks. Okay, I'm not sure I can actually give my perspective, if I'm being honest. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, it's hard. This stuff is hard. There's a reason why. Yeah. So I get questions like this a lot. How do I deal with this particular thing? And it's so I don't have like a compendium, like a book of like, when they say this back, or what, you know what I mean? Because I feel like every relationship is different. Every person in psychology, and the intersection between two psychologies is different in every relationship. And, I feel like the best thing to do is to have strong boundaries and to try to as consistently as possible, behave assertively. And I think a lot of people get confused about this. I'm actually probably going to do a video about this at some point, the difference between assertiveness and aggression and passivity, right? Passive aggression, right, is like a combination of the two things you don't want, right? So passivity is when you don't respect your own rights. Aggression is when you don't respect the rights of another person. Yes. Assertiveness is when you hold both in balance. Right?
It's it's really funny because I always say that strong boundary is so important, because I had a friend who I would like go off on tangents and angry rants because I'd be emotionally overwhelmed. And she would get overwhelmed by that because, she has empathy, I guess. And and so one of our things was like, are you in a place to hear my frustrations right now? And that improved our relationship so much.
Just you asking that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also she said no, basically.
How did you handle it if she would say no?
I'd go somebody else.
But at least right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if somebody's being passive aggressive and look, take the passive aggression out of it. If somebody's attacking you, then I think the appropriate thing to do is to sort of clarify for yourself first, what's the boundary, right?
Yes.
And then once you've clarified that for yourself, then think about how can you assertively uphold, maintain that boundary.
Enforce. Yeah.
Yeah. Knowing that you can't control anybody else's behavior, right? You can't make somebody respect your boundary.
Yes, I can.
Maybe you can, right? But most people, most people can't do it. Not without violating somebody else's rights, right? So what you do is, if you've made your boundary clear and you've reinforced it and emphasized it multiple times, then you have to start thinking about other alternatives. Maybe not going no contact entirely, but maybe being more judicious about the kinds of contact or the kinds of exposure you have to these people and the settings in which you have them.
I mean, it's because it's very strange for me from the outside of how my behaviors can affect other people. But I have noticed that maybe not the more distance, but the more I understand how my behaviors affect them and how they can be like, oh, that's too much. Their communication with me is so important. I mean, hell, like I have friends who I'll like have a moment, right? And I just want to ignore it, pretend it never happened. And I feel like they're walking on eggshells with me, more or less.
Well, I think
despise that.
But I think it's a big deal. But it's a big deal, like to get to that point where you can sort of mentalize that, what you are sort of bringing to somebody is too much for them right now.
Yes.
Where you can kind of have it in your head that this isn't a reflection on you. This isn't necessarily a rejection of you. It's more that somebody else is going through something. They have their own thing happening. And to be able to respect that difference, I think, is really a part of, I did that video where I was talking about the depressive and paranoid schizoid positions, and being able to kind of understand that somebody is having a different emotional experience than you, and that it doesn't have anything to do with your emotional experience, is a big deal.
I'm literally sitting here being like, oh, I gotta work on that a lot. Everything feels personal still. My God, because it's like, why would they be reacting to me in this way if if that wasn't intended for me? I guess.
Yeah.
It's a very hard thing to wrap my head around.
Right. There's a kind of an entitlement behind that, right?
Is okay, interesting. Entitlement is by far my symptom I am really blind to, so I'm interested.
Okay. Yeah, so the entitlement there, for what it's worth, is that because you have a need, somebody else ought to be receptive to it.
Okay. That's what
right.
I mean.
And not being able maybe to consistently sort of hold in mind that somebody else may be having a different experience than you, and so you need to work with that, right?
That's really fucking interesting because like that combines both lack of empathy and entitlement right there. The idea that
what was the first one that I combined? Oh, black and white thinking.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, I didn't hear what you said. What does it combine?
Lack of empathy and
lack of empathy. Got it. Yeah.
Because like I can't understand that they're going through something. Like I don't even consider it. I'm literally like, a good example is my car broke down. I wanted it jumped by my roommate, and they were like, "Listen, I gotta do this errand. I'll be back, and I will help you with this." And I was fucking offended as shit that I was like, "You can't just sit here for 2 seconds and help me do this," more or less. And it wasn't considering what they needed to do at all. And there was an entitlement there of I was like, you have to stay here and do what I like and help me out, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that the entitlement and lack of empathy really do go hand in hand in a way, right? Yeah. Because the entitlement is about feeling filled up. Your perspective is filled up with your own needs, right? And then that makes it almost impossible then to see the needs of another, which is what produces the lack of empathy. I think people get really confused about where lack of empathy comes from, right? It's not like its own thing. It's not like somebody's just like, I am not able to empathize. It's like you filled up with the urgency of your own needs, your own emotional needs. And so therefore you cannot empathize with another. I always compare it to like a starving person, where just everything is food.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're breaking into somebody's house to get a loaf of bread, you're not. Is that a lack of empathy, or is that the immediacy of your need to eat food?
Yeah. Like,
you know what I mean?
Oh man, that's fucking, yeah. I feel that. Oh shit. Oh man. Bro, you are making me like think about way too many things that I cannot. I'm not ready to think about yet. But I want to say that Dr. Ruth everyone is a self-aggrandizer on LinkedIn, which I find hilarious.
Yeah, I can't. I just can't. I like try to go on there every once in a while. I'm like, I'm gonna like work on my LinkedIn profile, and then I just see everybody's like studied little professional picture or whatever, and I have one too, right? I'm just guilty as everybody else, but I just can't. It just leaves such a bad taste in my mouth.
No, honestly, I feel like it literally, and some of this is projection to a certain extent, but I literally can't look at a post on Instagram saying that without thinking that this person is effectively a, like self-aggrandizing, basically. Oh God, I accidentally clicked on that. I'm sorry, Karen. I'm trying to go back and see where the fuck I left off. Let's see. Where the hell was I? Jesus Christ.
You were just looking at Ruth's comment there.
I'm having a lot of issues. Okay, so that's when Lucas came in. Hi, Lucas, by the way. Sorry, I did not acknowledge you. Okay, here we go. So your profile. Here. Oh, this is okay. I would love to hear your opinions on this because this frustrates me. Lack of empathy and sadism. Yeah, there's a huge difference. I have a hard time, emotionally connecting with people, sure, and sometimes understanding their positions. I used to think my cognitive empathy was so on point. As time wore on, I was like, oh shit, that's not as, it's not as bad as my emotional empathy, but I do have a hard time relating to how people feel. And I think that's honestly a big issue in how we conceptualize narcissism, is that we have this perfect idea of how other people think and what they want. And I want to point out with sadism, there isn't a, like, in the diagnostic criteria, there is nothing in that for any disorder that harps on that at all. This isn't a mental illness term, more or less. It's just a, well, there used to be at least, but nowadays it's like sadism is unrelated to pathology in my mind.
So it's interesting. Dr. Ruth over here has a great comment. If you want to be a good sadist, you need empathy.
Ooh, that's good. Okay.
I think that sums it up in my mind. That sadism is a perversion.
Would you say that, like, sadism is almost a what's the word? A projection of masochism?
Well, I think, gosh, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, that was a pretty wild thing I just said. I
So I'm just trying to like sketch it out in my head.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I can't see it if it is, but maybe you could say more about it. And
well, I was just thinking that, like, the idea that you need empathy to be sadistic.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so to me, it's a self-punishment in a way by feeling those emotions of fear, of pain, and stuff like that.
I see what you're saying. I do think that it is in a way a recapitulation of something, but I wouldn't call it masochism, because masochism is more about the feeling that a person deserves to be,
okay,
that you deserve to be hurt.
I got you. Okay,
you know what I mean. Whereas sadism is taking is the pleasure in hurting somebody else.
Yeah.
So I think that in that experience, there has to be some element of what it is to have been hurt yourself. Right?
Okay, that's so interesting.
So that you can kind of recognize the pain, the painful experience you're trying to engender in the other person, such that it is gratifying to you as the sadist.
That's interesting. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, that's really okay. I do want to ask, do you think there's a correlation between sadism and pathological narcissism?
No.
Thank you so much.
At least I've never thought of it that way. I mean, maybe somebody's got a study they're going to pull out and they're going to be like, oh, look, you know, but I
don't. Because again, to me, like, sadism seems so far removed from any sort of diagnosable condition, so to speak. I mean, I would say it's an error in pathology. It is a pathological thing, but
I will say this. In a lot of the literature on narcissism, and this is not, by the literature, I mean the sort of grand theorists who were writing about this, for at the latter half of the 20th century, really.
Yeah.
They do talk a lot about sexual perversion in narcissistic experience. So I do think that there's a way that when somebody is operating in a mode where they are trying to essentially extract from other people some resource that is needed for the self, that has the potential to become sexualized. Yes. And it also has the potential to sort of lead a person down sort of paths of perversion. And by the way, I want to be clear. I'm not like kink shaming here. I'm not like, these perverts and they're, it's not what I'm saying. That's not what I mean by perversion.
You're talking about the mental illness, what's the word? Mental illness perspective of some of the sexual drives.
So I'm talking about so there's sort of a way of being with others.
Yeah.
That recognizes, human rights, that sort of seeks to avoid pain and avoid engendering pain in other people against their will, right? I'm not talking about sadomasochistic role play here or anything like that. I think that's all fine. It's not perverse. Perverse is like, I'm going to drug this person at a bar so that I can take advantage of their body without their consent. That's a perversion.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to render this person immobilized, helpless, so that I can make them feel pain for my pleasure. That's perverse, right?
Gotcha.
So there's something about perversion that is, I think, in the literature at least,
inherently harming somebody.
Yeah, seeking to harm is really what perversion is.
Ooh, that's a really good way to phrase it. Seeking to harm rather than harming, because we all harm people, like intentionally or not. Well, intentionally, like not intentionally, more or less.
Yeah,
but to intend to do that is the perversion.
To intend to do it and to do it for one's own pleasure is really what it's about. Because there is a kind of perverseness to, being like a psychopathic CEO and like, just fire everybody, right? Who cares? Who cares about them and their families or whatever, right? There's a kind of
people for money too.
Yes, they're just dollar signs, or whatever. There's a kind of perverseness to that, but there's something about sadism where it's like, no, fire them because I want to see them suffer. So a sadistic individual is, So anyway,
I do want to point out, first of all, that for your cast self-esteem juice, which also I think is important for everybody, regardless of their pathological narcissism or not. Obviously, it's just the degree. I have had more people watching at a time than any other live stream I have done. So thank you for that.
How many do we have?
We had 63 at one point.
Wow.
I usually hover, my max is usually around 50, and I hover around in the 30s. I do have to pee real quick.
Oh.
Fuck, I had a question for you to answer.
I can think
what it was.
Riff on something while you go pee.
Let me find something. There we go. Address that question while I'm gone.
Narcissistic shame and neurotypical shame. Okay. Boy, this feels a little awkward. It feels like I've been left unsupervised on Jacob's channel. Okay, so first off, I guess what I want to say about the term neurotypical as it's applied to psychopathology, it's not not really the way that I think about it. I know a lot of people do, but it's not how I think about it. I don't think about pathological narcissism, let's say, or NPD as aberrant neurology, as aberrant brain structures or brain circuits or whatever. Although I know that there probably is a neurological correlate to the narcissistic experience, just as there is to any experience. I don't see it as a brain disease. I see it as a psychological phenomenon, having to do with the way that a person sort of makes and derives meaning, the way that they sort of relate to their own experience and the experience of other people, the way that they mentalize or kind of think about how other people are thinking and feeling and that sort of thing. So anyway, I think when we start talking about like neurotypicals versus other people, we're kind of running the risk of painting ourselves into a corner in terms of how we can think about these issues and how we can think about treating these issues. More importantly, if something is a neurologically based disorder, then how are we thinking about treating it? Well, we're thinking about rehabilitation. We're thinking about psychopharmaceuticals, right? We're thinking about brain scans. We're thinking about like there's something wrong in the meat, as opposed to something that we might be able to work with, in psychotherapy, for instance. And I don't want to go to the wall with that, because I know, when we're working in psychotherapy, we're working with brains too, and circuits that fire together, wire together, and all of that. And I think that's all true. But I really do prefer to talk about these things as psychological phenomena as opposed to neurological phenomena.
So that brings up two questions with me. Yeah. How do you feel about the term neurotypical, by the way? Because I haven't into it to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think, I used to see it a lot when people were talking about autistic spectrum disorders, neurotypical versus, not. And I'll be honest, I just don't like it. I don't like it.
When I thought I was normal, I fucking hated being described like that.
Mm.
And so I kind of get that. It's like, okay, there's people who are mentally ill and people who aren't. Like I was about to say, like,
yeah,
when you describe what you were talking about, it feels like people are acting like they don't have narcissistic defenses that can also be treated.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, I defy anybody to point to a part of the brain, a brain circuit, a brain pathway that causes pathological narcissism. You can't do it because that we don't understand the brain well enough to talk about it in those terms.
Would you say that there isn't brain issues in people who have personality disorders?
So I think that it's just I have a colleague who works with psychosis a lot.
Okay.
And he always makes this argument, and I found it strangely compelling.
Yeah.
In my training, they taught me, okay, look, these are all psychological disorders except for schizophrenia, right? Schizophrenia is a brain disorder. We can see it on brain scans, right?
Yeah.
And I was always like, oh, okay, okay, well, that makes sense. But his argument is, well, look, is it that kind of brain produces schizophrenia, or is it that schizophrenia produces that kind of brain? Right? A person who's operating in a certain way for years or decades, their brain is going to reflect that. Right?
So would you say that schizophrenia might be caused by trauma?
Oh, I think undoubtedly their trauma is a contributing factor to schizophrenia. Yeah.
Okay. And kind of how I view personality disorders is that you have a predisposition and then trauma can be.
I think that's probably the most accurate way we could talk about this. Yeah. Is that that's the diathesis stress model, that there's sort of like this genetic kind of temperament, right? A genetic potentiality, right? And then experience takes over from there.
Yes. Well, because that's my ex who has schizophrenia. Well, ex in quotes. We're again working things out, but she was because she experienced significant trauma in her past.
Yeah.
And it's like you can have kind of a schizophrenia wired brain, as me and my best friend put it, and then the pathological aspects come out when you're exposed to trauma. Yeah. And I view that with I would probably be an arrogant guy if I experienced no trauma when I was younger. And then when I was traumatized, it brought out all of those defenses in full, more or less.
Yeah, I think, excuse me. First off, I just want to put it out there. I'm not a neurologist. I'm not a neuropsychologist. I don't understand the brain in a way that I could speak intelligently about this at the level that I think I want to or I would like to. But
this is your personal opinions, stuff.
Yeah. So genetics definitely play a role, undoubtedly, like Pia Angel is saying here. Genetics plays a role, right? We're born with a genetically endowed temperament. Okay?
Yes.
How easy are we to soothe? How difficult are we to soothe as a baby, right? Are we born? Some people are born just sort of at ease with the kind of sensations and experiences physically that are occurring in their bodies, and some people are just highly reactive, right? Mm-hmm. They cry a lot. They're colicky. They're difficult to calm down, and that is going to have an impact on their relationship with their caregivers, right?
Yes.
How often are they left to cry when the person is just like, I can't deal with this baby anymore. I need a break, or what, you know what I mean? So, and that all of that experience becomes part of the developing self and the developing psychology, not just how a person thinks, but how, like, what is the quality of your physical embodiment, you know? Like,
it's actually really interesting because
Yeah.
I remember hearing from God damn it, my computer just went to sleep, and that's how I'm watching the chat in real time. It's really interesting because me and my sister, in terms of when we were children, we had very distinctive ways that we dealt with effectively, like, childhood abandonment, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
I was always, whenever I was like put down, I would just be quiet, just kind of sit there. My sister, who has BPD and probably has ASPD, she had a conduct disorder when she was younger, but she was not diagnosed after that as ASPD because she wasn't in therapy. She would cry every time she was put down. And I find that very interesting in terms of how that was reflective of the pathologies that we were going to develop as we were older.
I mean, I think so much of that also just has to do with family dynamics, right?
Yeah.
You know, I just, you know, in dysfunctional families, or, you know, families where there's a lot of, you know, expressed negative emotion and whatever else, like there are roles, right? That the children come to play in order to help maintain the homeostasis of the family system. And so sometimes that has to do with birth order. Sometimes that has to do with, you know, how does one caregiver or another interface, like what the caregiver's genetics, right? Their temperament, their psychology. What do they prefer? You know, so it's just, it's so overdetermined.
Yeah.
You know, just so complicated. I just feel like we can't really talk about it. All we can do is speculate, right? And just kind of try to hold together the reality that this is such a complex phenomenon that we just don't know. And furthermore, I don't know that it really matters that much. You know what I mean? Like, does it matter if it's like this brain circuit up here that we'll identify in 200 years when we have some kind of, you know, superhuman AI that's like, you know, figuring out how our brains work, or
I'm super curious about it though.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't matter, like I'm very interested in what it means.
No, it's a fun thing to like think about and like kind of riff on, but ultimately, I don't know that it really matters. You know,
in terms of treating it, it doesn't.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Also, I want to point out, this guy said that he loves you. By the way.
Okay. Oh, well, thanks, Thomas. Yeah, or at least, yeah, thank you.
You're more popular than you think, by the way.
Oh, well, I don't know.
No, literally, I saw a Reddit post recently, and I was like talking about YouTubers who are like educated in NPD, and in the same comment, me and you were mentioned.
Awesome.
So yes, you're very appreciated.
Thank you.
It's funny because it feels like that you take compliments very awkwardly.
I do? Oh, well, yeah. I don't know. Probably.
What do you feel about this? And I'm pretty sure this is a person who is a clinician.
Yeah. So I think that this comment was made when we were talking about therapeutic alliance and how any bona fide therapy is probably going to be somewhat effective as long as the alliance is strong.
Yeah.
I think that I think it's true. I think what happens is this: NPD is very difficult to form a productive therapeutic alliance around. Right?
I mean, there's like, I think it was not Kernberg. What the fuck? God, I can never pronounce his name. Kohout, or whatever the fuck it's pronounced.
Go ahead.
He mentioned that there was like specific transferences that happens with narcissistic patients.
Yeah. So there's a self-object transference that takes place, and there are different varieties of that as well. But basically, what that means is that the narcissistic patient is exerting an extreme unconscious pull on the clinician. So look, if it's true that all bona fide therapies are somewhat effective and that what really matters is the strength of the therapeutic alliance, and it's also true that treating pathological narcissism places a unique strain on the therapeutic alliance because of the unique ways that a narcissistic individual is communicating via the transference, then that is why most therapists don't know how to effectively treat NPD. Because effective therapy isn't that, you like know the like right thing to say, right?
Yeah.
It's not like in treatment, I'm not like, hey, here's this zinger and this smart thing, and here's my good advice. Now you're cured. That's not how therapy works.
I will point out from my
Yeah.
perspective, it fucking feels like that. It
Does it really?
It's like I feel like my therapist is manipulating me to come to certain conclusions, and I know that's
crazy. Okay, yeah, tell me more.
Well, like, because it feels like they will ask questions that are obvious, like as she explained it. It's like, no, this is to get you to think about your own stuff and then come to your own conclusions. To me, it feels like she will say questions that are intentionally trying to make me come to a conclusion.
Would you happen to have an example by any chance?
Fuck. Oh man. Honestly, it's been like a month since I went to therapy because I forgot to schedule more. I have to fucking call them. Holy shit. It's like so sometimes I will be talking to people, right? And I will have an intentional response I want to get from them. And it feels like that most of the time. It's very easy for me to feel like, oh, this question about your mother. And I think at some level, I probably know it's true, right? And I feel like it's trying to get me to express that thought that I have.
Yeah, well, I think to a certain extent, that's probably, and Dr. Ruth can let me know if she agrees with this or not as another clinician, but I think to a certain extent, you kind of develop this repertoire of like, these are kind of like my therapy questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or my kind of pat little interventions that I say.
Yeah.
Can you say more about that? That's one that I always, tell me more, right?
Well, it's like you know that like there's but you aren't trying to get them to realize something specific about themselves. It's more of like you want to know what is specific about themselves? Question mark?
Yeah. See, I'm not smart enough for that. That's the problem. I'm not smart enough. I'm not smart enough to like know that like the conclusion I want somebody to reach, and then to like walk them down some kind of like surreptitious path to get there. Like I don't.
Oh, so I'm smarter than you then. I'm joking.
I mean, I think probably in that way because I just like look. I used to play strategy games like as a kid. Like we play Risk or whatever, and I always sucked at it because like I can't strategize. Like I can't think like multiple moves into the future, taking into account like what like my brother is likely to do and and like on and on. Like I'm not very good at chess for that reason either, and so I just ask questions that I am curious to know the answer to usually. And I also will sort of ask people to talk more about their experience. And then if I feel like I've got something important to say, like an interpretation that might really resonate and bring together different threads, right? Then I'll say it.
See, you also may have helped my therapy by saying that because, well, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit in therapy, but it's like whenever I'm talking, it's just this constant monologue of, well, if I say this, then they're going to come to this conclusion, usually about me. And I'm going to have to reply like this. I have to make sure like I have to say this thing instead, because then they will come to this conclusion about what I'm saying and the impression that I'm giving on them.
Right.
Like for example, there was this, I have a friend who I'm not going to say their name, but they have a very inaccurate, in my mind, opinion on their relationship. And I'm very much trying to get them to this point of having a more accurate view on it, where I'm basically being like, oh, I can't say how I really feel about this, but if I say this, then maybe that will lead to something that I can say another thing about it, et cetera, et cetera. And my mind's constantly kind of having this monologue of how even if I want to get them something that is unrelated to it's partially related to my image because I want them to see that I'm smart by leading them to that. But it's this constant thing of I can't say this certain thing because I know it will have this reaction more or less.
Yeah, see, I think there's a certain hypervigilance that you're describing there, right? Where you're trying to
Okay.
avoid outcomes that you don't want to have, especially in therapy where you're vulnerable.
That's really an interesting way to phrase it, because I never viewed it as hypervigilance to avoid something, but
Yeah.
as hypervigilance to get to a goal.
Yeah, but see, the goal is to exclude, like, where you want to get is to exclude where you don't want to be, right? And so I think, I honestly, I think this is really where the internet misunderstands narcissism, is that so rarely, I think, is the conscious experience on the part of the narcissistic individual to manipulate somebody in order to get something from them. You know, I think much more frequently the impulse is anxiety based and has to do with trying to avoid feeling compromised or exposed in a way that recapitulates a traumatic experience.
See, oh my God, it's so right though. It's not so much me trying to self-aggrandize as much as me avoiding shame. And oh fuck, that's interesting.
And you get good at avoiding shame by, you know, the best defense is a good offense, right? I mean, you get good at avoiding shame by being grandiose.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before. And like, I feel like you have a good idea of this, is the intense reactions to shame that I have. And it was a lot better when I was unaware and a little bit more grandiose and couldn't identify shame, honestly. My emotions in high school were good, bad, angry. I kind of liked it that way, not gonna lie. And shit, you really got me thinking about the difference between trying to self-aggrandize and avoid shame, more or less.
You know, excuse me. It makes me think about a thing that I used to run into a lot when I was starting out, and I still run into from time to time. And it's when I first start working with somebody, and they sometimes will present themselves as very kind of intellectually curious about their disorder or their pathology, right? And sometimes that'll resonate with my own kind of psychology, and I'll be like, well, blah, 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 you know, and I'll like kind of start riffing on something. And what happens...
Very relevant to this, by the way.
What's that?
Very relevant to this comment I just put up, by the way, by Dr. Ruth.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, just real quick. What ends up happening is that I'll inadvertently cause the person to feel too exposed too early.
Okay.
When that particular combination of factors happens. It used to happen much more frequently, but not rarely happens now, but every so often. And then I'll only start to realize it after the fact that I've unintentionally caused this person to feel very exposed.
Interesting.
And it's such an interesting feeling that happens for me when I start to realize that. And it only ever happens in the first session, right when I'm first starting to meet. So I've learned, and this kind of gets to what I was saying before about like not having too much like strategy or whatever, not trying to like strategize, but some strategy is necessary. And one of those factors is regardless of how the person presents, really trying to sort of pace any kind of interpretations that I might make, because I just don't know yet how open and ready that person is to sort of being seen by another person. That can feel like it's shaming. It can feel like an intrusion. It can feel really bad sometimes to just be kind of rendered naked, you know, regardless of how true what I might be saying is. You really have to respect where people are so that they don't end up feeling like, you know, humiliated.
It feels like, because me and Tess kind of had a conversation about this, because she felt like it was very obvious that she felt she kind of dived in with her partner about vulnerability. And I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. Like, I will avoid somebody for like a day if I feel like they really saw me. Like, especially when I'm expressing very strong emotionality.
Yeah.
Because kind of what the real me feels like when I'm just being fucking unhinged, more or less. Like, I'm trying to think of a good way to phrase it. It's like
I've heard
they
it described as a vulnerability hangover.
yeah,
That fits. Yeah, but like, yeah, like just you got to kind of take some time to like reconstitute, you know?
It's like I feel like they see who I am, so to speak. God damn it, I keep hitting my desk. And that now they think I'm pathetic. That's the word. Yeah, they think I'm just someone who is fuck. Pathetic is the only word that really encapsulates it.
So this is a good example of where I think confusion between self and other comes into play.
Yeah.
A lot of times that sort of mystifies people, and they're kind of like, what do you mean by that? It's like, okay, this is a good example. Because of your internalized sort of judgments about parts of yourself, when you realize that that part of you has been seen by another, then there is a projection of your own self kind of self-talk, right? They think I'm pathetic because they saw that, and now you feel ashamed
because I feel pathetic about myself on the inside.
Exactly. Yeah. And in that emotional experience, it's really hard to kind of understand and kind of hold that the other person, like they might have actually thought, wow, I'm so thankful to Jacob for having shown me that. Now I understand him so much better. And that they could see that and hold that as valuable, some valuable part of you that you've shared, as opposed to some dirty secret that inadvertently got revealed. You know,
I'm about to put on my glasses right now. But,
sorry, I don't mean to like get too.
No, I'm joking. Yeah, it's fine. I get it because, like, to some degree, I understood that, but you just put it in words that I was like,
yeah, let me know, like wink at me, like if I'm getting too close, because I don't mean to, but every once in a while, you know, it's just kind of, you know, you hear something that's like, this is true. So, you know,
it's interesting because I'm so open about my pathology on YouTube and stuff like that. That doesn't feel like a vulnerable part of me anymore. Honestly, that feels like, and I get some really bad imposter syndrome about it because I'm like, no, this is fake now. This is not who I actually am. Because like now that feels a little bit more an overt thing. I feel like it's kind of part of me. I feel like it's not real.
I think what you're doing is really remarkable, actually. And you know, I mean, we had that little. But that's why you need to hear it, right? We had this like conversation offline about how, you know, it's like people can say, oh, you're just doing this for, you know, attention or whatever. And it's like, okay, I can sort of feel that. I feel that way too. Sometimes, you know, doing my YouTube stuff, it's like, yeah, what am I really after here? But I think what you're doing is remarkable because you're using this platform, right, to not only sort of work through your own stuff, right, but also to help other people work through theirs. And I think that every once in a while in my work, I encounter somebody who has some like a remarkable resiliency, you know, a unique kind of like way that they're going about sort of trying to right what was wrong. And when I see that in somebody, I just always know that they're gonna make it, you know. And this, I guess what I'm trying to say is this is something that I see in your channel and in what you're doing.
Okay, I'm joking a little bit. See, here's the interesting thing that I kind of express to people is that, like, I will accept compliments like you were intelligent, you're surface level things, and then when they actually address who I am as a person, saying that I am, like when somebody says you're a good person, I fucking like shut down almost. Like that does not feel real. It'll like, and I appreciate what you're saying, obviously, and it is true to some degree, but I'm always like, fuck, it feels like I tricked them almost. maybe not tricked them, but fuck.
Well, you know what my supervisor always used to say is she would always compliment me like, oh, I just love supervising you. I think you're just a great, you're just a great clinician and somebody to work with. And I just love, love, love it, except when I don't. Right. That she would kind of like just always hold together like the other piece of it too. Right. That sometimes she doesn't like working with me. Right. And it's which I think really it can really help make a compliment feel more genuine.
It's like I like some of these things about you, but oh my god, have I ever I think I mentioned this in one of my videos before. I'm not sure if you ever saw that video. Okay, this is going to be an invasive question. Do you watch my videos like frequently at all?
So I watch your videos when I can. I don't watch every video that you post. You actually
That's
post
fair. I post every fucking day.
But I try to watch enough of them in order to kind of stay on top of what you're talking about.
Okay.
So I may or may not have seen what you're about to.
Honestly, I kind of assume that you didn't watch any of my videos. If I'm being
honest. No, that's not true. Yeah, no, I definitely watch not all of them, but as many as I kind of can.
Okay. Before I get to what I was about to say, I was literally so shocked when you comment, but because I was kind of intending for that by mentioning I had a YouTube channel when I made a certain comment on your video, but I was shocked when you actually made a comment, and I was like, "This is," because I admired you. I'll be honest, and I still admire you, and I was like, "Oh my god, this!" I literally sent the photo of you commenting to multiple of my friends, be like, "Check this shit out." But yeah, I think one of the most touching comment I've ever got by somebody else was by my borderline ex, fucking naturally, where she told me that she knows that I hide parts of myself from her, but when she does see those bad parts, it's still something that she loves, and that she loves the good parts of me too. And I was like, I'm gonna cry.
It's so hard to accept.
Sorry, what's that?
So hard to accept that could be true. Yeah.
But it made me in a weird way. It made me feel seen, knowing that somebody knew that I hid parts of myself from them, which was weird.
But you see, that's so that's kind of to bring it full circle into kind of what we were talking about. And actually, one of the previous commenters, I think it was the first question that we answered, I used the term mirroring.
Yeah.
And they commented mirroring ? And I just kind of clocked it, but never got to it. That's mirroring, right? That's what mirroring is. That you have this experience and that somebody else saw it and mirrored it back to you. They told you about it, right?
Okay, yeah.
And that is what made it mean something to you. Right?
Oh, so much sense, yeah.
Because you probably knew that you hid parts of yourself and whatever else for a long time, but it's just this thing that you do, right? Until somebody catches it and they mirror it back to you, and in the context of caring about you, and then suddenly you're like, I've been seen. This is suddenly real. And I bet it turned into something new inside of you that wasn't there before about it.
No, I'm going to ignore that now. Okay, let's Dr. Ruth. I hope she's still here so she can actually hear the response.
Yeah.
But in my honest opinion, it taps into your own narcissism and the need to feel superior, and this is in reference to the transference that happens in narcissism. And a need to feel superior and better than those bad, evil narcissists.
Yeah.
Wondering what you feel about that.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. I see that all the time, and it just seems like bullying to me. You know what I mean? I get it. All right. People were people are in abusive relationships. People are mistreated. People get hurt and wounded, and they want to make sense of it. And they want to They want to understand why it happened and how it happened, and they don't want it to happen again. And they have they're on their own path of recovering and healing. And I totally respect that 100%. But the way to do it isn't to scapegoat this group of people who have a mental illness, you know, who are struggling themselves, and then to just talk shit about them endlessly. That's not recovering. That's not healing. That's just being a bully, so that you don't have to feel weak yourself. And that's I might be overstating my point here, but I when I was a kid and I'd see somebody getting picked on,
yeah,
I always just felt for them, and I would always try to stand up for them, and I'd always end up getting picked on myself as a result. And I just never like wised up about it. Like I just always kept doing that, you know? So I feel like, you know, let's rally around othering this person or this group of people. Let's talk about how evil they are and bad they are. Let's really like get up our own butts about how awful these people are and how they don't deserve to live, and how, you know what I mean? So that we can feel strong. And it's like that. Okay, but that is a well-researched sociological phenomenon. That's not like, you're not inventing the wheel here.
Yeah.
You know, like this isn't a new thing. People have been doing this for millennia. There's a term for it, scapegoating. And that term itself is in reference to something people used to do thousands of years ago in order to rid the community of their sin, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I get it. You have to be angry. That's a part of healing. But at some point, you have to like move past the anger, and you have to move into a place where you can see the other person as a human being as well. Otherwise, forgiveness isn't possible. Forgiving yourself or forgiving them.
Like, I think we talked about this too, is that like, yes, anger is necessary to move on and to accept those things, but your healing doesn't end there. Yes. Watching Dr. Ramani videos, and not to come at her or anything, but day after day is just perpetuating the first step of healing.
Yeah.
And I say to my viewers, like I say, like, yes, you start with Dr. Ramani videos, basically. Then you get to something like me, earnestly. And then after that, it should be, unless you're invested in me, in my journey, or narcissism in general, then you probably shouldn't be watching anything about narcissism if your only goal is to heal. And I feel like people get stuck at that first step.
Well, and it's also because narcissism is just overgeneralized to the point that it's a meaningless term on the internet now.
Oh yes.
It just means bad.
I did want to point out that I'm kind of curious now. We talked about this a little bit about why you felt invested in treating narcissism. And from what you said is kind of the fact that they're almost the little guy in in psychology circles and also on the internet.
Yeah. Well, I think that, so when I was in high school, I was on the mock trial team.
Oh, really?
And I was always a defense attorney on mock trial. Always. Wow. Never wanted to be prosecution, never had any interest in being prosecution. And it's because there's something about sort of speaking in defense of someone who has been, I don't know. There's something about defending. What's the word I'm looking for? Fills my sail. I don't know. You know, I enjoy standing up for the little guy or whatever. And, you know, and here's the thing, and it's not why I like study narcissism or treat narcissism as a specialty, but it is one of the reasons why I decided to get on YouTube about it. Is because for that reason. Yeah, I mean, it is obscene to me the way that this experience is portrayed and discussed in just by everyday people, just as a matter of course, you know? And I feel like we've been through this a number of times, right? Where there's some like out group and they're just hated on collectively. and they become this boogeyman, and everybody just knows that they're terrible, right? And then come to find out, oh, well, they're human beings too. Lo and behold, right?
Well, I mean,
These people were human the whole time, right?
It's fascinating because
Yeah.
I came out, so to speak, as a narcissist to one of my friends, and they were shocked because they had this conception of narcissism in their head that was not congruent with what it actually meant. And it's like, you know, you view it as evil people, more or less. As you said, there is no actual meaning to narcissism. It's just, it's the asshole disorder, as I call it.
Yeah.
And so once I actually like came out with that, it was a much more humanizing view. I eventually ended up showing her my channel because I'm fucking an idiot, I guess. And she was like, oh, holy shit. And that's a reaction I get often. They're like, oh, this person is an abuser because of their narcissism. And now that I actually see what they experience, somebody that has it that doesn't come off like an asshole all the time, my opinions are completely changed. Also, this might be controversial, but I've already came out with this. But do you have any opinions on HG Tutor if you've seen him?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Do you have any opinions on HG Tutor if you guys seen
I
him?
don't know who that is.
You don't? Oh, okay. Honestly, good for you. I made a fucking video calling him out, and people did not enjoy that. I got hate for that for like months.
Is he a clinician like Dr. Ramani, or?
He is a self-proclaimed narcissistic psychopath, and he has issues. I will say that, like in terms of how he describes this shit.
Well, you know,
okay.
Sam Vaknin.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah, I want that.
Similarly, and knowing the narcissist. Yeah. If it's the guy I'm thinking of here, I don't know. I'll have to look it up later. Anyway,
okay. I do want to hear your opinions on Sam Vaknin, though. Not gonna lie. Hey, everybody, it's off the record. Don't repeat it.
It's off the record. Yeah, no. It's what do I think of Sam Vaknin? Well, I will admit that I have not read his books.
I've read Malignant Self-Love by him.
Yeah, that's like the big one, right?
Yeah.
So, and people might say, well, why haven't I read this guy? He's like, here's the thing. If you're online, then Sam Vaknin is like the great grandfather of all things narcissism, and seems like the authority, right? But if you're in mental health and you've had formal training in psychology, then you've never heard of Sam Vaknin unless you've gone online to look at what other people are saying about narcissism. He's not an authority in the field in like established circles. Okay. By any stretch. So I'd never heard of him. And I already had written my dissertation on narcissism. I'd already read, all of the literature that seemed relevant and important and established and peer reviewed, right? Mm-hmm. And then I came online and started seeing the name Sam Vaknin. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I should take a look at this. And when I did, I was like, cold empathy? Like, what?
Cold therapy is
whatever it's cold therapy. Let's like re-traumatize people in hopes that somehow, you know what that is? That's like in like old cartoons when somebody gets amnesia and the cure is to hit him in the head again. You know what I mean? Oh my God. like I don't think that's how this works. But again, look, I'm not, and this is not me like, because I know like there's going to be like this brigade of people that are like, like Vaknin, like he tells it like it is, and who's this guy, shitting on. Look, I have not read his stuff. All I've done is I've watched a few of his videos, and I've seen him referred to on multiple occasions. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, please. Don't come after me because I don't.
Because I want to point out that Sam Vaknin, a lot of people think he has credentials, and he does not. He has a degree in physics from a not exactly reputable And Craig Malkin actually went after him recently.
Did
I
he?
thought it was hilarious. Yeah. Did you see that?
I didn't know.
Look on Twitter. It's kind of funny as hell. But I will give credit to him. He occasionally he'll say something. I'm like, that's fucking on point. That's how I actually found a study that I thought was really great. What was it called? Pathological narcissism through a lens of self-enhancement. I love that study. I'm so glad he made that.
That's his study?
What's that?
Is that his study that he did?
No. He has no peer. That's another thing, though. He has no research. Yeah. Not anything. He claims to have this huge database of people who are narcissistic. I don't believe it.
Right.
But occasionally he will say something on point. He'll say a study that I really like. But on the whole, he is ruled by his grandiosity. If he is really,
he seems like a smart guy.
Oh yeah,
and he's definitely like carved out a niche for himself. And maybe some of his ideas are on point.
Yes,
but I've also seen him. I've read some of his stuff online, and I've watched a few of his videos about cold therapy in particular, and that's really what turned me off. I watched the cold therapy, and I was like, oh no, like that. Yeah, I'm not going to waste my time on this, you know. But you know, then again, maybe there's something to it. I don't think there is. But I don't want to speak, you know, categorically, but I feel like the goal of therapy should never be to re-injure somebody in the hopes that somehow that like shocks them into like, you know, being a better person or healing or growing. I think anytime we're dealing with illness of any kind, you know, you need to be careful. You need to be gentle. You need to sort of trust in the innate healing ability of the organism. And I feel like there's potentially too much of his own psychology in some of the approaches that he's recommending.
And honestly, to me, it comes off like if I describe myself as a professional in narcissism and stuff like that. Like
there's like a lay person like trying to be a professional kind of quality to it. You mean?
Yeah, because I will not like never one of my videos. I say I'm not a clinician. I can only speak to my own experiences.
Yeah.
And the fact that he, because he'll call himself Professor Vaknin, right? And there's an implication there that he is a professional in psychology.
Oh, it's like Dr. Ruth Schlesinger. I can't remember her last name. She used to be like a radio personality, Dr. Ruth, not our Dr. Ruth, but different Dr. Ruth. Yeah. She called herself Dr. Ruth, and she would give advice to people, psychological advice. But her specialty was in like, I can't remember what it was, physiology or something. It was like not anything related to the stuff that she was talking about, you know.
Dude, I fucking I didn't go at him. I don't think he even posted the video. But there's this guy. He was like basically narcissists plan their discard from the beginning. And want to know what he backed that up by saying that when he was because he was trying to be a occupational therapist, which ironically is my mom's profession, and said that they planned the discharge from the beginning. And he's like, that's what narcissists do too. And I'm like, holy, like how the fuck is that relevant?
Wow. Real quick, it's Dr. Laura is who I'm thinking of, not Dr. Ruth. Dr. Laura, because our Dr. Ruth Ann Harper just wrote Ruth Westheimer. That's not who I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Dr. Laura, who was, her specialty was not in what she was talking about. Anyway.
Okay. Wait, we gotta pay attention to Mar because Mar, the person we have a comment. She's like one of my mods and also a very good person.
So, have I ever treated a narcissist? That must be in response to the narcissist, right? A narcissist. Because we were talking about like labeling the narcissist.
The narcissist, yeah.
That invoked a negative emotion within you during therapy, and how would you deal with such feelings towards client? Yeah, that's part of it. That is integral to the experience of working with narcissistic patients. That's what makes it difficult. right, is that there's a lot of projection involved and something called projective identification, which
Wait,
is
narcissists do that because it was Kernberg or Cal who I read in their books that we do not indulge in projective identification.
Oh, well, I mean,
Just projection.
so projective identification, depending on who you're reading, they may use the term differently.
Yeah.
It has come to mean different things, like so many terms in the psychoanalytic literature. So sometimes it just means that there's a projection, and then the person who was projected on identifies with the projection.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And like
Sometimes-
they project the bad parts of themselves and then empathize and identify with
Right.
that.
But sometimes it's meant that you sort of literally take something inside of yourself and put it into somebody else. So
Yeah, like when, for
Yeah.
example, if somebody is constantly accusing somebody of cheating, and that person ends up cheating in order to fucking and the frustration there is so much, and they cannot connect with their partner, they end up cheating.
And then there's also a way that it can mean that you project, and the person sort of experiences kind of a resonant emotion. Yeah. So you are projecting your badness onto me, and then I'm feeling
bad because of it.
Yeah.
A better example is like constantly accusing the partner of resentment, and then eventually they do resent you because of that constant accusation.
Yeah. Well, I've got to run to the bathroom real quick, but I'll be right back, and we'll talk about it.
Do you have any? Oh, never mind. You're gone. Do you have any hard cutoff time?
No, but I'll be right back.
Because I should leave, but let's see. Let's see another question. Hi, everybody. I'm actually paying attention to the chat now. Mar, are you still there? I really hope that you saw the. Oh, fuck. Would you ever do a live stream? I try to get him to. I'm going to try to get him to actually be like, oh, fuck, Mar's actually here. Okay, great. I'm going to try to get him actually do a live stream with me at some point. But he doesn't want his name said. He doesn't want to be seen. I'd love for him to come on, though. He wouldn't want his internal experience we talked about is the issue. So at most, he can talk about how I have been. Let's see that. How I feel live going. I'm professional. I first call off the first one. I barely talk at all because I'm so. Fuck. I'm not sure if Mark should be here for this to hear this, but basically, because I admire him so much, I feel grandiose because I'm being associated with him through this live stream. I'm like, oh my god, this guy has credentials. He's really cool. He makes great videos, and I'm on a live stream with him. I'm amazing because I got that to happen, right? It's weird, I know. MBD have been married for 15 years. Yeah, exactly. I remember vaguely what we were talking about. So, also, hi. I noticed you were here earlier. I kept forgetting to say hi, but you're a frequent commenter, and I know who you are, and I appreciate you. Toxic Queen, but with a K. So appreciate you, Lucas. Ooh, that's a really good question. I might wait for Mark for that one. We'll look at the other ones. All right. You came back at the perfect time.
Okay.
Can you tell the difference between MPD and BPD and how they are comorbid?
Yeah. Okay.
As I said this in one of your comments of, well, no, I think we were talking about it offline. Like MPD is BPD with a grandiose shell, and personally, I kind of find it redundant to diagnose them comorbidly.
I remember that. Yeah. No, I think that's true to a certain extent. This actually gets back to the previous question as well about projective identification.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's true that narcissists don't engage in projective identification, first of all.
Okay.
I think that is a way of managing unwanted emotional experiences.
Real briefly, I do want to point
Yeah.
out, like, it makes sense when you like that we do engage in that, because I think I made a video about how with most of my exes, they felt worthless, replaceable, not unwanted, but small, embarrassed, stuff like that, which were definitely my emotions that I feel like I was projecting onto them.
Yes. Well, yes, exactly. So making the therapist feel unimportant, small, irrelevant, stupid, right? Weak, ineffective. Those are all going to be projected experiences from the narcissistic patient, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the other part of the question was, what do I do with that, right? And the answer is try to metabolize them, essentially. Okay, so think about it like this. A baby bird, right, can't digest its own food, right? Can't break it down for itself. So it needs the mama bird to do that first and then give it to the baby bird, right? Yeah. So that's kind of a gross, but I think concrete metaphor for how we learn to metabolize our own internal emotional experiences. We project them out. We scream them out into the world, right? And an attentive caregiver receives them, metabolizes them. Oh, are you hungry? Oh, are you cold? Oh, are you scared? And then responds in a way that meets the sort of unspoken, unmetabolized need. Okay. And that experience, repeated often enough, becomes the child's own ability to metabolize their internal states. In the absence of that kind of interaction, then the child is just left screaming their unwanted emotional realities into the world, right? And that looks like projection, and that looks like projective identification. Yeah. So when somebody's operating in that paranoid schizoid range, that borderline range, right, that's the primary way of dealing with unwanted emotional experience, is to get rid of it, to eject it out of the self and put it into or onto other people. Because why? Because they're evil? No, because it's a developmental delay. They're stuck doing the same thing they were doing when they were 2.
They have no way to deal with it.
That's right. That's right. So that's why I say all psychology is fundamentally relational, right? Because you can't make meaning of an experience until you've given it to somebody else and they've worked on it and given it back to you in a comprehensible or tolerable form, just like the mama bird does the baby bird. So that's what a therapist does too, right?
See that? Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That reminded me of a question I actually had, but I can't. Fuck, I forgot it already. I hate my life. Well, let's address this question then. NPD, BPD differences, and how do they present comorbid? Because I said my opinion on that.
Yeah. So, I think that structurally they're very similar. The underlying structure of the personality is similar. The structure. So NPD learns to sort of compensate with the creation of a grandiose false self, right? Whereas somebody with BPD doesn't necessarily have that false self to hide the underlying vulnerability. The other difference tends to be in terms of where, like, the like main preoccupations or the sort of schema, the underlying schemas involved. BPD tends to be more about establishing and maintaining and navigating a boundary between self and other.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah.
So people with BPD, they tend to feel completely isolated and abandoned, or totally enmeshed and actually intruded upon and invaded by the other person and taken over by them.
Like that's something that I find so hard to understand is that fear of enmeshment, because it feels like they almost try to find their identity between like a boundary between somebody that they are very invested in.
That's right. And the angry outbursts that happen in BPD tend to be when you felt intruded, when the boundary has been too soft and they feel impinged upon or intruded upon by the other person, and then they push back suddenly, forcefully, to reestablish a boundary. And then there's guilt that follows that, and then there's fear that they've pushed too hard and now the other person's going to abandon them. And so and that's why BPD tends to be more overtly about like intimacy and like closeness and separateness and stuff, whereas NPD, the preoccupation is about self-worth and the sort of value of the self. There's just as much dependency on other people in NPD as there is in BPD. There's just as much ambivalence about like the difference between self and other. Like you said, if you're too seen by somebody, it feels really bad.
That's a realization. That's one of the realizations I had recently because I was talking to Mara actually, and it was like, oh, it feels like enmeshment if I am on equal level as somebody. I can be more evil than somebody, that's fine, and I can be better than somebody. But then when I'm on even weight, like if we are both the same, then I'm not anybody because we are the same, basically. I don't know. Like it's
yourself. You don't have the valence to sort of organize your sense of who you are.
How do I know who I am if I'm not being compared to somebody? The best compliments to me are in comparison to anybody.
Yeah. That makes sense. And they're comorbid. Everybody with NPD has a little bit of BPD. Everybody with BPD has a little bit of NPD.
Well, and we all have things of antisocial and histrionic too.
That's right. Yeah. Don't think of these as discrete, like, do you have the flu or do you have rhinovirus, right? It's not, they're not separate entities. Think of them as on the path to sort of integrating a sense of self and an ability to tolerate distressing emotional experiences in a way that's flexible and sort of adaptive. On the path there, something happened, and you got stuck sort of in this with this internal world that is not fitting together well.
It's this God, I always view cluster B personality disorders as a very meshed what's the word? Like the circles that overlap.
Oh, like a Venn diagram?
Venn diagram, yeah. Like cluster B personality disorders are a very distorted one of those.
They are, and that's why I actually prefer to think of in the simpler terms of like the borderline range and the neurotic range because when somebody has a personality disorder, whatever flavor it is, they're operating in that borderline range. And that can tell us what to expect, how they're kind of dealing with the world, what kinds of defenses they're using, that kind of thing.
All right. So I will say we are getting to about 2 hours here, so we should probably wrap it up.
Okay.
I'm going to very quickly go through some of these comments. We can give very brief.
Do it. Rapid fire. Let's go.
Yeah. Here we go. Okay. So let's see. And then after this, I would like to actually talk to you one-on-one about how this went and stuff.
Sure.
I'm not sure if when I end the stream, if we won't be able to talk anymore, but if it does, we'll start a Zoom call real quick.
Okay.
Let's see what we got. God, I get so behind even when I'm doing this on my own. And then 2 people makes it way worse. I'm not sure if Mara's still here because I would have loved her to comment on the trying to establish boundaries between who they are and the partner is. I'll ask her about that later, actually. Maybe I'll make a video on it. Let's see. Come on. Dude, seriously, we've had so many people here this entire time. I am very. This is interesting. I know a lot of people with ASD who are sadists. What the hell is up with that?
What is ASD? Oh, autistic spectrum
Autistic
disorder.
spectrum disorder. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't.
That's why I say like sadism is unrelated to any specific disorder at this point.
Yeah, I don't think it goes hand in hand with any particular disorder. I think.
It's a different spectrum to me, and I think that could be pathologized, but it's not related to anything diagnosable right now.
Sadism is the one psychopathology that I find truly terrifying. The idea that someone feels gratified when they hurt somebody else is, to me, that to me is other in a way that I struggle to try to
relate to at all. Yeah. No, I get that. Also, is shame in NPD specific? Feeling a shame over something that they've done. I wouldn't say specific, but like stronger in NPD.
I think it's like the tides versus, a tsunami.
Yeah.
The tides, they're predictable. You can sort of have your storefront on the beach, not have to worry about it. Like tides they don't destroy everything in the area. So I think when people with NPD experience shame, they're flooded with shame. It's like a tsunami of shame.
I will literally remember things like from years ago, and I literally like sometimes I fucking hit myself. Well, not nowadays as much, but this self-hatred that comes over me, I'm just like, fuck my life. Or I mentioned this before, but I literally vomited from shame before.
Yeah, you did mention that. Yeah. Oh, it just sounds awful.
It is overwhelming is the way to describe it. Oh, fuck. It's horrible. Do you recommend a therapeutic hypnosis treatment?
No.
No.
Because
usually you're like, well, and then you're like trying, I wouldn't say dodging around it, but you're trying to be tactful,
diplomatic. Yeah. No, I don't think you can
I can hear you, by the way. I gotta turn my light.
Okay. I don't think you can there's not like this one trick that you can do,
That's what hypnosis feels like it's trying to achieve.
Yeah. And I don't really, I think hypnosis is essentially just, it's an unspoken agreement between the patient and the hypnotist, hypnotizee and hypnotist, that they're going to kind of both pretend that something's happening.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like, oh yeah.
I'm not saying it's like a con. What I'm saying is like, it's more like a role play. Yeah,
exactly.
That the patient is like, oh, I'm being hypnotized now. Oh, here I go. I'm being hypnotized. And they convince themselves, just like you do for a placebo effect, right? They render themselves into a kind of suggestible state where
that's what's interesting about it is that like, I think a placebo effect is the perfect way to kind of look at it, because they are, I had a really good thought. What the fuck was it? They are effectively just kind of allowing themselves to just and my phone's about to fucking die. One sec. They're allowing themselves to basically be vulnerable, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Under the pretense of hypnosis.
It's a role play.
Literally.
Yeah.
One sec. Oh, fuck. God damn it. I hate that my phone, it's great to have a new phone and it's not as prone to dying, but when a phone does die, it's fucking awful. There we go. Okay. Moving on, because we need to get through this shit. On here for 2 fucking hours, Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm a psychopathic and definitely hurt people. Hurting people is not solely based on psychopathy. For me, it's based on justice almost.
What do you mean, justice?
Like if I lash out at somebody because I feel like they
Mm.
intentionally hurt me.
I feel like that's what all aggression, well, that's what anger is for, right? Anger is for protecting something that you value.
Yeah.
And sometimes, we go too far with it, whether or not we mean to. I think,
especially if it's a perceived aggression rather than a real one.
Yeah. Psychopaths do hurt people intentionally, but not because they enjoy hurting people. Usually, it's usually because it's a means to an end.
Yeah, it's an instrumental.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's like, because like most people don't enjoy hurting people, so to speak. It might be for a purpose that will result in enjoyment.
Yeah.
But not for the aggression in itself is not enjoyable.
Right. Sadism is the hurting people for the pleasure of it.
Yes. What do you think about like there was a personality disorder that was based around sadism that got removed? How do you feel about that being personality disorder?
I just don't know enough about it, honestly, to really know if that would be like it. Should that be its own personality style, that has its own disordered range? I don't know if there's a sadistic personality style that would make sense. I think there was something like that in one of maybe the first draft of the Psychodynamic Diagnostic Manual as well.
I think it was in DSM-3 even. Maybe not the 3, but I think it was at least in the 2.
Oh, okay.
I know that. Also, Benny, one of my mods, welcome. I'm not even sure if they're still here, but love you. We call her Discord Mom because she's one of our mods on Discord. Honestly, if you want to join the Discord, feel free. Let's see. See, it's funny because as we were talking, a lot of people just started talking to each other.
Yeah, I'm noticing that. It's kind of crazy. It's like all these parallel conversations happening.
And I love that, honestly. Ooh, this is a really good statement. Jeffrey Dahmer was not a sadist. He drug his victims to not make them suffer. I actually think that he may have had a BPD because of his how terrified he was of abandonment. And that being said, probably not best to pathologize serial killers, but it's interesting.
I think Jeffrey Dahmer psychologically was an infant in some ways.
Yes.
And I think there was this desire to have omnipotent control over his victims, again, not so that he could hurt them, but because he wanted to possess them and merge with them in a symbiotic fashion that is very regressed, and I think is very much kind of how very, very, very young children want to be merged with the people that they care about.
That is a fucking fascinating psychological take on it. Do you have you made opinions on that, like on serial killers based on psychoanalytic theory? Yeah,
I mean that's kind of what I'm drawing on. Yeah, is in thinking about it that way. Yeah,
we could make a whole fucking video on that because that's really interesting. Holy shit!
Yeah.
Because when I was a kid, I read when I say a kid, I was in middle school. I read a bunch of books on serial killers because that at the time that was my specifically cannibalistic ones, just because I thought it was interesting. Like Albert Fish is stuck in my mind because I think about how he shoved fucking needles into his pelvis and how they got lost in them, and when they did an X-ray on him, like fucking.
It's like walking through like a botanical garden of like psychopathologies. To read about some of the more famous serial killers, just this it's like the presence and fully like florid, like psychopathy, sadism, and like multiple kind of like regressive, sorts of developmental fixations and perversions that all kind of are functioning together to produce this singular portrait of just of aberrance, you know, of just somebody who's just not able to like be a person.
It's funny because I literally I did a video on stalking, and I did some research on it, and to my surprise, there was a lot of narcissistic pathology that was related, but there was not a single one that had like one personality disorder, and that was it. It was all these people with a cocktail of issues.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
No, one personality disorder doesn't produce a Oops, thanks for that, Siri. Creeper. Doesn't produce a serial killer. There's multiple, you know, intersecting issues.
Yeah. It's like, how can you, and like something as pathological as stalking, how can that originate from one disorder, honestly?
Yeah.
Also, systemic is here. Hey, Karma here. Personally, we just like term neurotypical because not all pathologies have significant neural discrepancies from the brain of normal people. Some disorders are coping mechanisms. I agree, hence why I use the term normal in quotes.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like that's fair.
I agree with that as well.
I love how the tangents in the live are more insanely long than usual. I'm, however, hanging on to every single word. That's flattering. But also, yeah, I'll go on tangents lives and then try to get to the next thing.
I like the picture there too. I like that person's profile picture.
Mars?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it's a picture of her backwards facing a mirror, which is really interesting because I read a study. She has borderline. And it was super interesting. I read a study that people with borderline, if they had two chairs back to back, one of them was facing a mirror and the other wasn't, 95% of the time, borderlines would face away from it. But normal people, it was like 50-50.
Well, I think that makes sense. I don't know why, but I think it does. Like, makes sense intuitively. I think people with borderline personality disorder, I think they hate themselves.
Oh yeah,
more often than not.
Oh yeah. They're stuck in basically what is a vulnerable narcissistic state in my mind.
Yeah, and very much turned against the self in a way that I think just feels intolerable. Oh, sorry. She says, no psychoanalysis in my profile picture.
Mar, we're sorry. We didn't mean to psychoanalyze your profile picture.
Sorry about that.
We'll keep doing it. I don't care. But no, because like it's interesting, and maybe that can tie into the idea that like their lack of self, right? That's a result of them hating themselves in that degree.
Well, and the idea of identity diffusion as well, which is kind of for anybody who doesn't know, that's sort of the feeling that you just don't know who you are.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes in the borderline, not just borderline personality disorder, but borderline phenomena, that there can be these extreme kinds of, like grasping at identities, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's like, I'm a goth now, and now I'm a this, now I'm a that, and nothing against goths or whatever, but sometimes that can function as sort of a way of trying to have an identity when you feel lost in terms of identity.
I mean, like you'll see borderlines like dyeing their hair and shit, with like just trying to like find that identity. And it's really interesting because when I got into a really low space, I had this urge to remake myself. And Tess is going through the same thing right now. She was like, I want to dye my hair. I want to move to somewhere else, et cetera, et cetera. It was that underlying borderline that became dominant in that time. Also, I want to say hi to Shishi. What's going on? I love you. E. Hi, E, by the way. Long-term fan. She was literally around my channel when I only had 50 subscribers.
Humanizing the narcissistic style. Well, allow me to present one of my favorite books. Yeah. Oh,
I've read parts of that.
let me tell you, Steven Johnson is my hero. Like, I fanboy out over Steven Johnson all day long. Yeah. Oh, I can't recommend it highly enough. Not just this book, but also his other books as well. Characterological Transformation. Where are some of these other books I've got of his? Character Styles up here. The Symbiotic Character over here. Yeah. Steven Johnson, I just can't say enough.
That's so interesting.
I've never talked to him. I'm too intimidated, to be honest.
Meanwhile, there's me, who I literally reached out to fucking Frank Yeomans.
See, I admire that because that's how you got to do it too. Like, I have a colleague who knows Steven Johnson, was part of a consulting group with him because he lives in Palo Alto, which is by San Francisco. And I just, like, my jaw hit the table when we were out to dinner, and she told me that she knew him, and I was just like, my eyes were as big as like saucer plates. So
I'll reach out to him.
Yeah, reach out to him. Well, let's get him on here, and then I'll be I won't say anything. I'll just like sit meekly.
Well, you know, Disarming the Narcissist?
I know the book, but I haven't read it.
The person who wrote it, I'm gonna have an interview with her on the end of the month.
Look at you. Like, you're just like gangbusters, man. You're just like, that's awesome.
Craig Malkin retweeted me.
I saw that.
I fucking lost my mind. I was like, oh my fucking God, what? No, it's like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. I'll fucking reach out to anybody. Because here's the thing. If they aren't interested, they won't reply. And that's the best possible situation for me. Because Frank Yeomans did reply.
Who did?
But he
Frank
said
Yeomans?
no. And I was like, oh my God, that's worse than these other people not replying.
Wow.
It's so funny.
No, my dream scenario is like to be like any kind of collaboration with Steven Johnson. But
oh yeah.
And I will admit he does like some like energetic stuff, like I forget what he calls it, like different like body positions that are supposed to kind of help get you in touch with an emotional experience. And he writes about that in some of his books, and I just pretend like those parts aren't there.
Literally, I'd be like, okay, bro, love those. Like, I can see myself interacting with somebody who I'm like listening to, being like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And then they bring up something like that, and I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's cool. Anyways, what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. Yeah, it's like this awkward like period where I'm like reading, like, yes. You know.
Also, this person said that huge fan of both our channels.
Oh, thanks.
Do you? This is interesting too, because I'm not sure. I think they may have gone to therapy, but they highly suspect they have NPD. What's your opinion on self-diagnosis?
Well, okay. I guess my opinion on diagnosis, right?
Yes.
Is that it is useful insofar as it's useful.
Yes.
It is not, don't like diagnosis as like an end in itself is like useless. Who cares?
Yeah. The label is not as important as the traits that has to be addressed.
It would matter if we were talking about a discrete physical entity like a virus, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, do you have COVID or is it the flu? Like, this matters, right? Do you have like, diabetes type 1 or type 2, right? Mm-hmm. Like, the diagnosis matters. It's really important. Mm-hmm. Do you have NPD, or are you just like pathologically narcissistic in some ways, or is it BPD, or is it some combination of the two, or is it, some other, like, it doesn't really matter because they're not real.
Yeah. They're trying to encapsulate some personality traits that kind of coincide.
Yeah, it's like a fuzzy facsimile of reality. You know,
Yeah.
it's like a
Players
group
game.
of people, a group of psychiatrists got together and they decided, hey, let's this separate out these symptoms and we'll call it this. Separate out these symptoms and we'll call it that. We feel like there's enough evidence in the literature to justify this or whatever. And okay, maybe there is or maybe there isn't. But at any rate, what matters most is that we're able to make meaning in therapy. And if you're self-diagnosing, what matters most is that you're making meaning of your experience. Right.
And you're like addressing the parts of yourself that need help that you're trying to fix.
Right. Are you growing? Are you learning more about yourself? Is it meaningful to you to call it narcissism? If so, fine.
That's a really fucking good way to put it. God damn it. Here we go. Anything new and exciting happening on the horizon with researching NPD? And in my own opinion, I think the new research that's super important is recognizing the fluctuations between grandiose and vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, so that I would say that. And that's reflected in a lot of the research being done with the PNI, the Pathological Narcissism Inventory. That looks at both vulnerable and grandiose aspects of the disorder and is able to kind of hold them together at the same time, which I think is going to make a massive difference in over time how people think about pathological narcissism. Because right now they only think about it in terms of grandiosity.
Yes.
And so
grandiosity, it takes away any of the suffering.
It takes away the suffering. So then if all you're measuring is grandiosity using something like the NPI, the Narcissistic Personality Inventory, which is based on the DSM. And everybody, if you haven't watched my videos on this, I have a 2-part series on my YouTube channel that talks all about this problem. But if that's all you're using,
like I watched that video and I fucking lost my mind about how good it was.
Well, I feel like it needs to be said, you know? Yeah. So if that's all you're using, then all your research is skewed because you're not going to find any correlations between subjective distress and NPD.
Yeah.
Which leads to the dehumanization of the disorder. So I think using the PNI, we're going to start seeing all kinds of correlations with actual mental illness, hallmarks of mental illness.
I love it. And how I love that fucking it captures self-sacrificing self-enhancement, for example. That's completely neglected in the DSM. Hell, every edition of the DSM. And that's something that has ruled me in parts of my life.
Okay.
Like I literally act as a therapist for some of my friends because of the kind of gratification I get from it.
Sure.
And also, I want to point out, she said, basically, Jacob, we aren't as smart as you think we are. That is in reference to while you were gone, Mar asked a question about how I feel about how can I basically stand being in a live stream with an actual doctor. Oh. And I replied with, well, I mean, they have credentials. They're impressive. I admire them. And so I am then special because I am associating with them in that way.
Oh, I see. Okay. I see what I see. How do you not feel overshadowed or something?
Yeah, basically is what she was asking. And basically, in short, I admire you. So I am basically honored, I guess, in being able to go live with you.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Try not to be awkward about
it. Yeah, I knew, like, that's what I didn't mention it right when you came back because I was like, let's see, who else is here? God damn it.
Barbarian is here.
Can you click on comments and make them
Let's see. Let's find out. Where are we on this now?
Right beneath Dr. Roof's comment that should be highlighted for you. Ruth said bingo, Dr. Mark. No idea what they were talking about.
There's lots of comments, so
yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Let's see if I can. No, I can't highlight things.
Okay, so it's just me. Um,
Somebody asked about psychedelics. I'm going to say this.
Wait, look at this comment. Let's not say anything
Uh,
about it, but let's just be amused by it for a
There
second.
it is. She is a very polarizing figure. I'll say
Yeah. Yeah, let's leave it at that, honestly.
that.
How do you feel about psychedelics?
You know what? I don't have any issue with them.
Okay.
I think that I'll speak to my own experience of psychedelics. So when I was a young and callow fellow, like when I was in like college, did my share of LSD and other recreational drugs, and I gotta say, LSD changed my life.
Really?
Just changed it
To to a positive degree?
in a positive way. Yeah, I had this experience of being in. I was at a friend's house, kind of a friend, somebody I went to high school with. We were in college now, so I hadn't seen him in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And he was just like this kind of maternal figure, He had like this maternal energy about him.
Okay.
He was
taking care of her.
Yeah. I mean, he was just kind of just a caregiving kind of guy, And I was tripping on the floor, and he was making cookies for everybody. And he like came and like gave us all cookies, and Bjork was playing.
Yeah.
He was playing. I'd never heard it before, but it was like this kind of it felt like the music was like in me, and sustaining what like the experience I was having.
What you mean, yeah.
And then he came over with these cookies, and I got to tell you, like it was one of the first experiences in my life of actually being like feeling cared for. Right.
That's the thing. Okay.
Like I had bad childhood and all the rest, but like just really feeling like cared for and sort of held in a way that just permeated me. And like, and I wouldn't have been able to experience it that way had my like mental facilities not been broken down by the LSD. Right. So it got, that experience hit me at a level that was almost like, in my mind, I was a little baby.
It wouldn't have affected you in the same way if you weren't tripping.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on. Let me just finish the thought by saying that it changed me. From there on out, I was a different person, and I feel like that experience gave me a foundation that I could build on, in terms of just starting to my own mental health work. My therapy, I was in therapy at the time, and it wasn't doing anything for me. And suddenly it started to like make sense. I don't know. I'm not saying like don't run out and do LSD or whatever, kids, like drugs are bad. Okay. And whatever.
Yeah. We do not support drug on this channel, by the way.
Right. But I will say that I think in the right settings, under the right kind of safety protocols, psychedelics have tremendous potential to help people feel impacted at a level that we're too defended to be impacted at otherwise.
But with my personal experience, I tripped shrooms with a girl once, and this girl I treated like shit early on in our relationship. Well, we weren't dating, but there was a period of time where she was very much interested in me, and I was kind of, but like not quite. And I treated her like shit. On shrooms was the first time I felt guilt about that.
Oh, okay.
And it was because like shame, yeah, what the fuck ever. Well, not what the fuck ever. It's horrifying, but I felt shame about it. But like, guilt was such a mind-blowing experience for me. Because it felt so other focused, I guess you could say.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You felt like you could really see how you'd hurt the other person.
I remember sitting there. I almost felt horrified at my actions. I was like, wow, that like I really treated you poorly. I couldn't fucking, and it was weird. I'm like, you guys can keep fucking guilt. Like honestly, that was the first time I was able to connect with that emotion though.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell people, oh yeah, go do fucking psychedelics to feel guilt, I guess. But it was a very interesting moment for me.
Well, and I worked with a patient once who was experimenting with psychedelics in that person's personal life, right?
Yeah.
Not as part of the treatment, but I, we were able to incorporate some of those experiences that person was having and kind of I think it had a similar effect in that it helped that person to kind of start to feel parts of themselves that maybe they couldn't otherwise connect to.
And so I want to get to another question I had earlier that I completely forgot about. But Spirit Narc said she's on psychedelics, but she says that it was traumatic for her and it did make her self-aware of her NPD. This is Tess, Spirit Narc, right?
Yeah. Well, I know of Spirit Narc. I don't know Spirit Narc. But...
Yeah. She did psychedelics and it like basically traumatized her. And I want to point out that psychedelics can go in the opposite direction.
Oh, yeah.
And hell, when I tripped the last time I did, by the end of it, I wanted to, let me put it this way. I was in a very rough spot. And I wrote a whole fucking paper on why God hates us, basically. And I want to point out that's the danger of it, right? It's like it can do life-changing things in both ways.
I think that's very true. Yeah.
Also, I wanted to ask earlier, do you think that both grandiosity and vulnerability can both present covertly at the same time?
Both covertly at the same time. Yeah. And what that would look like is just kind of I think somebody who's just take an everyday pathological narcissistic individual, pluck them out of their life and sit them down in the chair. Nothing extraordinary is happening. They're eating lunch and you pick them up and put them down in the chair.
Yeah.
Right. There you go. There's covert grandiosity and covert vulnerability sort of at the same time. Right.
I feel like most of the time, if you were to engage a narcissist, unless they're like super grandiose or super vulnerable, that's what you would see.
Yeah.
Because I think masking, in quotes, is part of pathology. I would say that I mentioned this before, but I don't think to you, but in my Discord I was talking about it, where I feel like borderlines mask to hide their symptoms. Narcissists mask as part of the disease.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, and that's why hiding the self is one of the items on the PNI.
Exactly.
Somebody asked where they can find the PNI, and I would say look up the research of Aaron Pincus on Google Scholar, and type in pathological narcissism inventory alongside that. You'll find it.
Wait, what was it?
Aaron Pincus, AARONPINCUS.
And then the narcissistic personality inventory based on that?
Pathological narcissism inventory, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Pincus has been researching narcissism. He's my other kind of crush, professional crush or whatever. He's been working in this area for 20 years and doing some fantastic work, pioneering work in redefining what this disorder is.
Also, I want to point out there's a bunch of comments basically being like, you're so great for being vulnerable and you're helping people. Don't tell me that. But no, I'm joking. But I think this is it because I criticize the construct of malignant narcissism. I think that at most you could be like, somebody has NPD and ASPD, and that could be considered malignant narcissist, but why not just call it NPD and ASPD? Do you think there's a construct that is actually valid encapsulating malignant narcissism? Because, I mean, there's barely any research on it.
excuse me. I think it's probably better to think of it in terms of somebody who has psychopathic traits and narcissistic traits simultaneously, as well as possibly some sadism as well.
I thought you were going to go with the fucking paranoid traits and what was the other one? I don't remember what it was. Yeah, sadistic traits and paranoid traits as well.
Yeah, it's sort of like what this. Do I think that it should be its own disorder called malignant narcissism? No. I think it's a useful construct in thinking about like certain historical like villains and dictators and stuff. You know?
Joseph Stalin, Hitler.
Yeah. I mean, like, and you can see the narcissistic strivings. You can see the psychopathy. You can see the paranoia, right? You can see maybe perhaps some sadism as well. You can see how this individual, under the right circumstances, was able to write their own psychology across like the world stage, right? And I think a certain amount of charisma goes along with that as well, like a certain amount of charm, a certain amount of extroversion. I mean, there's all these different pieces that kind of have to come together in just the right way, just the right constellation to produce the phenomenon that we could legitimately call malignant narcissism. But I don't think it's useful to have that as its own disorder. I think it's so rare that a person has all of those traits in the right combinations, and
have the power to be able to express those properly.
Well, yeah, I think most people, with those traits, they're in prison, right? Or they're, dead in a ditch or whatever. I mean, they're not like, it's not the recipe for like a successful person necessarily, right?
And narcissism though is that like it's so rare that what is the usefulness, and like if it is a valid construct, how is that useful in therapy?
Right. Yeah. You wouldn't be able to do therapy with somebody who's put together like that.
Exactly. And I don't know. I just have issues with it because there's literally no research on it. There's Kern Brewery's takes on it, and then there's basically nothing else.
Well, and what's it for? What are we talking about it for?
It's another way to demonize narcissists, more or less.
Yes.
All right, let's see. I hope we're getting close to the fucking bottom of this, because I was like, all right, speed round, and now we're fucking another half hour in.
Right.
Also, Ruth talked about her boss that was very, very good, despite being narcissistic. I watched him because of you. I may have never forgive you for inflicting on my ears. I think they were talking about either Batman or HG Tudor.
HG Tudor, I think, yeah.
Fuck both of those guys. Let's see. God damn it. Let's get another. It's true. He brought the term narcissistic supply back into the and narcissistic abuse into the common culture. Because I literally looked into it. The first use of narcissistic supply was in something that was completely unrelated to narcissistic pathology.
Is that right?
It was it was like just a what was it called? The strive for wealth or something like that. It was described as a natural drive of non-pathological people.
Well, it is. Yeah, it is. But
and like, narcissistic supply for like people like me, it's a thing. Hence why I use the term self-esteem juice. But the construct was not based on
the way that people talk about it, and even in like narcissism forums and stuff, like the way people talk about supply, it's kind of gross sometimes. Like it's like, this person was my supply or whatever, and I'm like, really, is that really how you're thinking about this?
Okay, that's what I hate. I literally made a video on that. Fucking, it's not the person, right?
Yeah, no, it's not. No.
It's just the self-esteem regulation they give. And for me personally, I have never used somebody a romantic partner purely for narcissistic supply. I thought I was in love with them.
I think I don't think that I think it's rare that there's sort of studied intention to like use. I think that's that doesn't resonate for me with the subjective narcissistic experience.
Yes.
You know, which I think is much more often about like, I need this, or I think narcissistic people often experience themselves as impoverished in some way and in need of something.
Like I knew I needed attention from a pretty young age. I realized I got almost a high off of it, but it was never like I am only interacting with this person for that.
So Pia down here, the latest comment says all psychopaths are narcissistic. I disagree with that.
Same. It's a genuine grandiosity in psychopaths.
Yeah.
Where this is a not feigned grandiosity, but a protective one.
I think in narcissism, the grandiosity is covering up a vulnerability. I think in psychopathy,
yes,
the grandiosity is much more like arrogance. It's much more just like, I'm better than you. I'm better than everyone. And that's it, because psychopathy is about power.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh my God, yes. Okay, two things. One, I'm so sorry. I'm talking over you so much.
Okay.
But when I describe my narcissistic spectrum with pathological narcissists being all the way at the end, the other end I found to be psychopathy. That's kind of what I theorized on.
Oh,
and
interesting.
then
okay.
On the other, what was it they just said? What did you say right before I interrupted you?
Psychopathy is about power?
Yes. And narcissists and psychopaths can look very similar because power and prestige are so tied intrinsically.
Yes.
Also, I will point out Echo. I was afraid this person fucking died. I'm not going to lie, because she commented on every one of my videos and was active in our Discord. Disappeared one day, and I am so happy to see that comment. Jesus Christ!
Yeah, I'm glad you're here, Echo.
Yeah, Echo is great. My God. Holy shit! There is so much here.
Yeah, we probably have to maybe have time for like just two more, because I just got the message that the pizza is here.
I still want to talk to you real briefly after this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Fuck it. I'm going to just go to the end. Oh my God. You're so fucking behind. I did not realize this. Systemic asked about the theory of structural dissociation.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I didn't hear about it till they mentioned it, so I will not touch on that super long, because it's outside of both of our knowledge, I would say.
What's that?
It's outside of both of our knowledge, basically.
Oh, okay.
Okay, fuck it. I'm going to the end. We'll answer two more questions. Sorry, guys. Holy shit, we are so fucking behind. Okay. Two more questions. This is what happens when you make my video have way more people all at once than anybody else. All right. Moderators, can't you pick comments? I don't think they can. I'm not sure, though. Come on, guys. Two more questions. Let's go. They were so talkative. Now they're fucking silent. Oh, hey, TJ. What's up? Broken on the face. Okay, that wasn't a question. I'm gonna go up and see if I can find one. Then maybe the last one that comments we can talk about. Here, question: have you ever done a brain scan on your patient? I was reading that doctors are able to see NPD by looking at their brains now. That second part I'm not sure about, but I do know that there's been relations between certain brain abnormalities and NPD.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that research. If it, yeah, I haven't. I don't do brain scans on people.
And we're a psychologist, won't just do brain scans.
I mean, I might if I had like access to like a brain scanner, but I don't.
Can I get one too?
Why are some narcissists so cruel to children? Projection. Yeah.
I mean, same. I mean, well, because for me, it's like, I mean, that's why narcissists are cruel to anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, I hate the idea of a kid being mistreated.
Yeah, no, I don't think that people are. It's again, you know, there are all different kinds of ways to abuse a child, right? And
yeah,
sometimes it's intentional to like hurt them because of some sadistic impulse. But I think what ends up happening is that people who struggle with recognizing the boundary between self and other on a consistent basis will, when they're in times of high emotional distress, fall back on some of that old black and white thinking, those kind of more borderline level defenses, and they'll project their own feelings of yuckiness out onto the child and take out their wrath on the child. And the child is a proxy for the self, for your own feelings of frustration at that moment.
Which it's important to point out that not all narcissists will do that.
No, yeah. I mean, absolutely. Yeah, that's not. Absolutely.
Also, 2 more questions that just popped up, and I'll give you. You can choose which one. What okay. Okay, here. Well, okay, 3. How do you get through to somebody with NPD that they're projecting and gaslighting? What defines narcissist as abusive to another in romantic relationship, and if not physical? And why do narcissists always feel like they're being attacked?
Well, I think they always feel like they're being attacked. Well, I don't know that they always do, but I think they often do, because they're feeling misunderstood, right?
Yeah.
So, again, from the narcissistic individual's perspective, they're trying to sort of get a need met. There's a pressure, an internal pressure to get a need met of some kind or other, and oftentimes that fills up their perspective. They're not perceiving how you're feeling or what you're experiencing, because they're too kind of preoccupied with what is happening inside of them. And so when you then say, hey, you're doing this thing to me, right? And then they say, no, I'm not. All I'm asking for is, right? And so it takes a long time sometimes to get to a point where that person can sort of begin to perceive, oh, the cost of my behavior on this person is X, Y, and Z. And often they're defended against that realization because it means that they did something wrong. And that opens up, the floor threatens to kind of come out from under them, and they'll fall into shame spirals and self-loathing and all of that stuff. And so that's the short answer is that they're defended against seeing it that way. And they're often too preoccupied with the immediacy of their own emotional need to recognize yours.
Really good answer. Okay, we're wrapping this up right now. Also, want to say again, Echo, I'm very glad you're alive, by the way. All right, when I end this, I'm not sure if this will end like us being in the situation. If not, just send me a Zoom link real quick, and then we
sure thing. Okay, well, hey, everybody, thanks so much for all your comments and questions. And this was super duper fun. And I'd like to thank you, Jacob, for hosting this. And I just, this is awesome. Like almost 3 hours just flew by.
Yeah, I was literally looking at it being like, oh, I have to be somewhere tonight. Holy shit, I have to be there at 6. But yeah, no, I had a great time. We got to do this again. Also, thank you, Mar, as well. I got to pay attention to her. She's my little sister now.
Okay.
All right. I'll catch you guys later.
Bye, everyone.